Number 4 this evening. I found out this evening that it was announced I was preaching all day. I apologize for letting you out so early this morning. I'll try to make up for it tonight. We'll see how that goes. All right, I can see people nodding off already. Okay. 2 Timothy chapter number 4, verse number 2. The Bible says, preach the word, be instant in season and out of season. Reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long-suffering and doctrine. Let's pray. Lord, I pray tonight that you'd give us a good evening to think practically about the business of engaging men in gospel conversation. I pray, Lord, that you'd help us to see how we can better communicate, get folks to open up, and be willing to consider the claims of Christ upon their life. May we, all of us, as God's people, may we be used to point people to Jesus. For it's in His name that we ask it. Amen. Paul was very clear. He said we are to preach the Word. It's not a matter of trying to change the Word or make the Word relevant for our day. We need to present what God has. It's not a debatable subject, yet at the same time, as we spoke about this morning just a little bit, we need to be thinking more in lines of a GPS. We need to know where the destination is, and I think we do a good job of that in our churches, teaching what the gospel is and what it means to be converted. I know that's done well here. But I think where we often miss it is we don't stop to consider where the starting place the individual we're talking to is. As you understand where they're starting, you then start looking for the waypoints along the way to bring them to the acknowledging of the truth. But if you don't stop to listen to where they are, you'll not know where the starting point is. And it's kind of like calling ahead for directions and somebody says, well, I know where I am. Let me tell you how to get here. And they don't stop to ask you, what road are you coming in on? Where are you starting from? And if they give you directions from the north route into their place and you're coming from the south route up to their place, you're going to be completely turned backwards and turning in the wrong direction. And I think that happens a lot in the witnessing life of the average believer. We often go and we announce where people need to get to, and we don't consider where they're coming from. It doesn't change the message, but there are points along the way that have got to be emphasized if we're going to be able to help those folks. I've found some of those ways over in Africa as I've been dealing with people until you kind of begin to know where those intersections are in many people's lives, and you begin to listen for them, pay attention to them, and when they mention a particular idea or a thought, you know immediately where they're coming from, and you know where you need to start to ask about those things. I think that's true in America. Paul said we're to preach the word, and now watch this, be instant. 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 We need to be quick. We need to be ready. We need to be prepared ahead of time. And I can't help but think that that's much of what the Lord says the church is to be doing with itself when it comes together to meet. Our job is to equip the church so the church can go into the world and do its job of reaching the lost. And so tonight we're going to do, I hope, some equipping that'll be of help. We're to be instant in season. That's when you realize, hey, it's being received, but more than that, it's when you're prepared. Hey, I'm prepared to be speaking to people who want to hear me. It's nice to speak to those kind of people from time to time. I enjoy visiting with folks who want to hear. Then there are times when you speak to people who don't want to hear, and you're with a crowd of people who have nothing to do with the gospel. They're not friends of the gospel, and you need to approach them in a different manner. You're still headed to the same destination, But you need to approach them in a different manner and realize you need to be instant in season, but also out of season when it's not as well received. So for some of you, it's going to be, as you go out for your holiday season, you meet with different people, you're going to be at company picnics or parties or whatever else that you might end up at. You're going to have some opportunity to talk to some people if you are instant in season and even there out of season, ready to speak for Jesus Christ. And so tonight I'd like to help equip you just a little bit with some things. Now, again, as I said this morning, much of this comes out of what I've learned doing door-to-door work through the years, and especially this year as I've tried to figure out better ways of communicating with people and ways of helping people here in the States in churches. Everywhere I've gone, I've talked to people about where they're getting hung up, where they're having problems with getting to a gospel message with people. And it seems like those first two stops are the big ones where people have trouble. Contact, and second of all, the issue of conversing with people to get the message moving in a gospel direction. So tonight, here's 6 things. There's other things besides this, but real quickly, here are 6 things that I hope you'll carry away before we're finished. First of all, how to get people to want to talk to you. Not just put up with you. Now, I've seen that through the years a lot, where you go to talk to somebody and they're polite, so they'll stand there and let you yak till you're done yakking, and then they leave. But people who want to talk to you, want to listen to you, want to hear what you have to say, how do you get them to that place? I hope I'll be able to help you with that a little bit tonight. Second, how to increase the percentage of people that will actually converse or dialogue with you. I've gone, usually in the past, I would see myself knocking on doors and I would hope to get 10, maybe 20% of the people actually talking back with me. I'm not talking about the people I'm talking at. I'm talking about people who are talking back to me and I have a good conversation with them. If I could get 10 to 20% of the people at the door that I knock on the door, if I could get 10 to 20, I'd be happy. What I wound up with by the end of the year was a good solid 50% of people talking to me. Now that seems out of character to me for the America that I expected to find. I expected to find an America that was closed to the gospel, that wouldn't talk about the things of God. And the portrait of the media, certainly listening to people report about the spiritual temperature in America, I thought it was going to be far worse. I found an easy 50% in some places, and it differs with places. But there was one place where I probably talked to 125 people in that area and wound up with a good 70% of those people willing to have a conversation about the gospel with me. And part of it is some changes that I made in my approach, and I think part of it is, because of that, knowing how to approach people, and we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. We're going to also try to uncover how to uncover the type of person. We talked a little bit about the 3 types this morning. How do you uncover who they are? And I'll share that with you tonight. How to open up the heart of a person so you find out what a person's really thinking instead of just surface talk. We'll talk about that tonight. We'll be dealing, for some of you, you're beginners. You say, I don't even know where to start. I know some things maybe about the Bible, or maybe you don't know much. And you say, I'm a beginner, I don't know where to start. Well, we'll help you tonight, I do believe. And believe it or not, I'm going to give you the perfect answer for every situation tonight. How's that for a big promise, all right? You say, I don't think you can deliver on it. Well, wait and see if we can't do it, all right? You'll be kind of surprised at what I'm going to recommend tonight maybe, but I have found it to be very effective. And then I'm going to talk to you about how to get back in the door, how to talk to somebody at a door. We're talking a cold call or whatever, how to get back in the door. You meet somebody in the mall and you're sitting there talking to them or standing there talking to them, how to actually get contact information, be able to get back to them. So going to be rather practical, I hope, tonight. That's my plan. Over in the book of Proverbs, if you'd go over there with me, book Proverbs this evening, chapter number 18. Proverbs 18, and beginning there, we're going to look in one verse, verse number 24, a verse that you're probably rather familiar with. Proverbs 18:24 says, a man that hath friends must what? Show himself friendly. And there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. Not like the elephant here who's crashing through the door. Some folks are like that when they go to the door. I remember the days of door-to-door salesmen like that. Certainly remember the day of car lot salesmen were often like that. And I recently have been with a preacher who was like that. And I mean just beat the door down and people had to talk to him. I'm not real comfortable around that. I don't know about you, but that's not my personality. I'm not interested in trying to force people. If they don't want to talk to me, they don't have to talk to me. I'm not real concerned about that. I'm not going to force people. I want to find people who want to talk to me. I'm looking for those seekers. I'm also looking for those simple people. But the scorner, I'm not going to chase him down, knock him down, and tie him up so that he has to listen. I'll let him go his way, but I'll keep praying for him. And if I have opportunity, hopefully be able to drop a seed or two in his heart that God can use at a later date. So, if a man wants to have friends, he must first show himself friendly. A lot of what happens at the door depends on how you approach. I've got the S3 and the W3 here, all right? I couldn't figure out how to get the superscript up at the top, so I had to put it down at the bottom. So you got an S3 and a W3, if you can read that off that screen there. 3 S's. First of all, when you go to the door, show yourself. Now, by that I mean, very simply, don't hide around the corner. Don't get in some place to where they can't look out their little peephole or their side window and see that you're there. Get in a place to where they can see who you are. I've been with people before that'll go up to the door and the door will be right here and they stand right up front of the door like they're ready to walk right in. Well, the only way I'm opening my door is with a gun in my hand, okay? I don't know who you are. I don't know what you're up to. If I'm opening the door, or maybe I'll come around from the back and slip up behind you because something isn't quite right. Somebody's standing at my door that I don't know like that. Step back a little bit from the door and let them see who you are. Second, try smiling. Even if you don't feel like it, it's okay tonight, all right? You can smile at people. You'd be surprised what a smile will do to you and do for them as you try to talk to them. I mean, you can get people literally in Walmart walking down. You want a good place to go fish for people? Go out to Walmart, walk the aisles, and just smile at somebody and speak to them and see if they won't talk back to you. They'll be, whoa, they'll be kind of shocked, and some of them will stop and talk with you. And you'll have opportunity to have a little bit of a conversation. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit how to do that tonight, and ways that you can keep from violating, Walmart's policy. They don't want you running around throwing out all the tracts, okay? But you can still talk to people. There's no law against just having conversation with people and being friendly. And you'll find that if you'll be friendly with people and look for people that are friendly to you back, that those are the people you'll have opportunity then to begin a gospel conversation with. Number 3, not only show yourself, not only smile, but give them some space. Now, I wish I had somebody up here. I don't have anybody up here, but boy, how could I do this? Maybe this will work here. Here we go. All right. Just imagine this is somebody here. I'll tell you what, Jeremiah, come help me, will you? Okay, this will be a whole lot better, just a real person. All right. Here's Jeremiah, and I want to talk to Jeremiah. It's okay to talk to Jeremiah if you're standing back here with a little bit of space, but don't get in his personal space. I'm here to talk. Where are you going? You can be seated. I can see he's a scorner. He's moving away already. All right. When you start getting into people's personal space, they start backing up. They don't trust you. Back off a little bit, and your breath probably stinks to begin with, right? So back off a little bit so they don't have to smell you and they might be more willing to speak with you. And I say that in, jest a little bit, but the truth is, it's true. You don't have to breathe on them, Okay, enough said. All right. The 3 W's, here we go. Here's what you want to tell them. Who you are, Identify who you are. Why you are here. And number 3, you want to ask them, would you be willing to help me? Now let me explain the 3. Number 1, who I am. Give them a name. You don't have to identify everything about yourself. You don't have to give them a social security number and all that. But it's helpful if people know your name. They know you're human. If you're out door-to-door visitation, I think that it's wise to let people know that you're from a particular church or representing a church in the area. I don't know that it's absolutely necessary, but I think it is good to let folks know that you're a Baptist and you're not one of the other cults or whatever. And if they don't like Baptists, that's okay. Hey, I'm not going to get upset with them. That's all right. Maybe they've had a bad experience with Baptists along the way. That's okay. So have I. I'm still a Baptist, all right? And so, anyway, I want to let them know who I am. But I don't want to spin forever. I'm not going to spin a pedigree of who I am. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is who Jesus is. And if you got a smile on and you're willing to tell them who you are, okay, all right, you're probably not some horrible criminal that's come there to rob them. They aren't quite sure that yet, but still let them know who you are. Second, why you're here. And I learned this from my son Sam. About a little over a year and a half ago, we were out knocking doors, and he'd been explaining to me what he was doing at the door down in Philadelphia. I'd listened to it, and I didn't pick up on it. You won't pick up on it if you don't listen real careful, because I didn't pick up on it. And so we went out knocking doors out in North Dakota together, and we're knocking doors, and he's knocking doors, getting people to talk to him. I'm knocking doors, and nobody will talk to me. And I'm saying, what in the world? I did brush my teeth. I combed my hair. I did what I could do here. And so I said, let me go with him. And I went with him, and I watched him and I picked it up. Oh, there it is. That's what he did. There were a couple of big things that he did. Number 1, he told them why he was there. He gave them a reason for them to participate. Now, here's what he said, basically, in essence, what I said, what I say now. My name's Doug Hammett. I'm from Lehigh Valley Baptist Church, and I'm just in the neighborhood. Okay, now I've introduced who I am. I'm just in the neighborhood doing a survey. Don't stop there. Doing a survey is what I had been saying, and when you say that, most people glaze over. I gave up on surveys long ago because of that. I didn't like them. But I saw Sam doing it. He was telling me how well it was working. I said, well, let me give it a try. And so I tried it, and it didn't work. And then I watched him, and I said, I see what happened. Doing a survey on spiritual life in America. Oh, this is bigger than just a survey. This is spiritual life in America. And I'm wondering, now we get down to that third W, would you be willing to help me? Key is willing, key is help. People like to help other people. Would you be willing to help me? I then add, and this I picked up from him as well, it'll take about 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Now, most people, you can see them, their wheels start turning. And I've had a number of people this year say to me, well, yeah, 3 minutes, I can do that. I don't think I've had anybody only last 3 minutes. I'm not planning for it to last a long time. Literally, we can get done in 3 minutes if that's what they want. But if they want to continue the conversation like many people have done, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes at the door, yeah, I'm all good for that. But I'm not requiring it. I'm asking for 3 minutes out of their time. Sometimes I say 2, but you can say 2 or 3, whatever. You're going to ask a simple question. I'm doing a survey on spiritual life in America. Sometimes people ask me, well, what do you mean spiritual life? Well, of course, I had a little bit of an advantage. I'm traveling across America, and I'm talking to people all over America. Actually, I live over in Africa right now, and I'm just concerned about America and the spiritual life that's here, and I'm doing a survey. And that's quite genuine because I am concerned about America and wondered how in the world America was going to be coming back after 7 years. In asking the question this way, I've given them a reason to participate. I've told them how long it will take them, that it's going to be a short time. They don't have to spend a lot of time with me. And I've also asked them for their help, and a lot of people will be willing to help you. And maybe they got a good reason. I've had them say, well, you know, we just put the dinner on the table, and hey, not a problem. If you can't do it, it's okay. I just asked. I told you about the woman this morning who had her kid in the bathtub, and I said, well, please go rescue your kid. And she went back in, and I assumed the kid lived through it, and I left to the next door. All right, I didn't see any ambulance pull up, so that was good. But you'll see people sometimes with good reasons and sometimes not so good, and that's fine too. I'm not there to force them to talk to me. I just want to find the people that are willing to be friendly enough to talk to me. If you find somebody who's friendly, you got a chance to move them on to a gospel conversation. If they're not friendly, you're not going to bully them into a gospel conversation. You might bully them into standing there and listening to you like the elephant there. You might stand there and they might stand there in fright saying, I don't know what to do with you. But they're not going to be open with you, and you're not going to get very far with them. So you're looking for people who will be friendly back and willing to give you just a little bit of time. That's what you're after. Now, having said all that, use questions. Jesus did a study years ago, several years back. It began to intrigue me as I looked at the questions that Jesus used. And God used questions from the garden with Adam. Adam, where art thou? God didn't lose Adam. He knew where Adam was. Jesus used questions. 287 times in the Gospels, Jesus asked a question. Now, do you think that was because Jesus didn't know anything? He knew everything. He didn't ask the questions because he didn't know. He asked the questions for other reasons. And there's several reasons why you ought to use questions. And among those are, first of all, it shows that you're interested in their opinion. And people want to give their opinion. They want people to know what they're thinking. As long as it's not going to be a debate or turn into some argument or something, they want to be heard. That's how people are. It identifies the person's heart. You can, with a question, you can ask the question, spiritual questions, certain ones, and I'll be giving you 5 of them tonight, but you can ask these questions and you can pretty well tell whether this person is going to be a seeker who comes towards you and says, tell me more. They're really hungry and they want to know more. You've identified the seeker. Or whether they're a simple person and they'll kind of give you some answers and you got to work with them a little bit, but they're willing to talk with you. And as you go a little further, you might see them starting to lean in a little bit. Or if they're a scorner, you'll see them giving either no answer at all or just some flippant answer, and you can tell you're wasting your time with this particular person. Leave them with a gospel seed and let them know you'll pray for them. And leave. Be kind about it. I'm not talking about being mean, but just be kind about it and go your way and look on. And third, it will start a genuine conversation. Not with everybody, because everybody won't be open. I'm not looking for people just to give me rote answers or some quick yes or no answer. I'm looking for people who actually want to open up their heart and talk from the heart. They want to be honest. If they're not going to be honest, you're not going to be able to help them. So it starts with a question. It starts with listening to their answer. And their first answer, let me guarantee you, their first answer is most of the time going to be a surface answer. Remember the 3 levels? It's going to be a surface answer because they don't know if they can trust you. But as you begin digging with a little more of a question, they're going to start going, if they're serious about being open, they're going to start going down the ladder a little ways and opening up more. And if you don't get shocked at them, you know, they say, well, you know, honestly, I don't go to church. What? You don't go to church? Well, that's probably going to shut the whole conversation down, right? That's okay. Hey, I know a lot of people don't go to church. In fact, most people in America don't go to church. Did you know that? And they say, but that doesn't mean I don't believe in God. Hey, I can buy that. I know a lot of people believe in God who don't go to church. Hadn't changed their life, maybe. But that's okay. I meet a lot of people. Or what if you meet someone who's a sodomite? I don't get real shocked at that. No worse than some of the other folks who are adulterers in our generation. And they too need Christ. It's a heart problem that needs to be fixed, and only Christ can do it. Jesus didn't get shocked at sinners. He wasn't angry at the sinner at that point. He'd speak to them about the need of salvation. Friend, that's where we need to come from. So it starts a conversation. And that's what I want. That's what the questions are for, is to open up conversation. But I could add a fourth one here, and we could keep going with these, and this one's not on our slides, but it causes people to think. And it is my considered opinion that nobody will ever be convicted of their sin who doesn't think. If they don't think, the Holy Spirit has nothing to work with in them. Their thoughts are shut off. God isn't going to just move in and bring conviction with no thoughts at all. There are going to be thoughts that are thinking that's going on. And I want to bring about that thinking, and the best way I know to do that is not telling people what to think. It is asking people questions that bring them to good, godly conclusions that cause them to think. Now, here's the difference. If I tell you what to believe, the first thing you're going to do, if you don't know me or you don't like me, is what I say. You are looking for what's wrong with what I say. You're not looking for what you agree with. You're looking for what you disagree with. And that goes double for people outside. That goes double for people in the general community out here that you've never met. And you walk up and you tell them, hey, that suit you got on is gray. And I'm going to say, well, no, it's not really a gray. It's a light black. Now, I mean, your first thought is, how can I disagree? I don't know if I want to agree with this person. You don't know if they're leading you on. I'm going to show you how to keep out of leading questions that cause people to want to argue with you instead of really open up. So I want to ask questions, and I want to ask questions that cause them to think, and I want to ask questions that cause them to come to right conclusions, and there's a right way to do that. I think there's a lot of wrong ways to do that. And you say, well, what if I ask them a question? Well, have you ever done this? Have you ever wanted to witness somebody? You looked at them and you thought, and this happens a lot with people that you already know, if I talk to them about spiritual things, they're going to get upset with me. So because of that, you talk yourself out of talking to them because you've decided how they're going to respond. Let me tell you how to solve the problem. Ask a question. You say, but what if they get upset? Simple. If I ask you a question and you get upset at me asking you that question, Lino, could I ask you, why did you wear that tie with that shirt?
Because it's the only clean tie and shirt I have.
And he gets upset at me, and I say what? Hey, I'm sorry. I was only asking a question. Now, I really wasn't just asking a question. I was making a statement, wasn't I? But when we're asking questions, a lot of times sometimes they'll get upset. Doesn't happen. I haven't found that to be real often on the street as I'm dealing with people. But sometimes they get a little bit upset, especially if they don't know you and you haven't but just started the conversation. Sometimes they're a little on edge thinking, what are you up to and what are you after? And I just put my hands up and say, hey, I'm sorry. Honestly, I was just asking a question. Now, I can do one of two things. I can back off and just completely end the conversation. Or number two, I'll see them say, well, that's okay. And then they'll go ahead and answer it. And I've had that happen several times this year. So I'm saying that by simply asking a question as opposed to making a statement, you make a statement, they can get upset with you. They can go to arguing with you. But if you just ask a question and they get upset, you just simply say, I'm sorry, I was just asking a question. So let's move to the scales, if we could, for just a moment, and why this is important, okay? I want to show you how to take a question from an accusation to more of a sliding scale where people don't feel like you're boxing them in. I asked Lino about his tie and his shirt. I could have asked it this way. Lino, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being you really don't like the combination, and 5 being you just love that combination. You wish you could dress this way all the time. How much do you like that tie and shirt combination? The real answer is okay, yeah. 4.1. There you go. Now let me tell you the difference. If I'd asked him, yes, do you like that combination? He's going to say yes, but I don't know how much he likes it. Number 2, he knows I'm leading him somewhere, and I've probably got an ulterior motive behind my question. I'm trying to box him in. I'm manipulating him. But if I use scales, I stop manipulating. I give him the opportunity to think about it. I'm going to give you 5 questions tonight that literally, if you'll use the sliding scale with, you will see people's wheels start to turn. This has been one of the most revolutionary things I've done this year, is to ask a sliding scale. I started with a 1 to 10, and I've messed around with some other numbers, but about a 1 to 5 seems to be the very best sliding scale that I've been able to find here. It seems to be pretty much usable. You don't feel like you're manipulated when somebody asks you on a scale of 1 to 5, and then they tell you how to grade it, and then you get to give your opinion of what you think about it. See, if you ask me, what do you think of Mr. Trump? Do you think he's a good president or a bad president? I'd be like, you know, come on. There's some things I don't like here. There's some things I do like here. I don't like being put in a box. Now, you put me on a scale of 1 to 5, and I can come up with an answer for you. And by the way, I'm not going to give it to you tonight, all right? But number 1, you don't feel manipulated when you use a scale. Number 2, there's room for discussion. Well, why in the world would you say a 4.1 on that tie, I wonder? Would there have been a better combination? Is there something you could have done? Or is there a better way? What would you change? Would you change the tie? Would you change the shirt to make it a 5? How could you change it? How could you leave the two together and still make it come out to a higher number? You could come at this from all kinds of directions. And I know we're talking about something rather silly about the tie and the shirt combination, but this is true about the gospel message too. And I'm going to show you how it applies here in a moment. Number 3, a third reason to use the scales, it reveals a person's sureness and their hesitancy. How sure are you about what you're saying? How hesitant are you about this thing? I'm going to show you how that goes. Here we go. 5 questions. Let's go to the first question if we could. Question number 1. These are starter questions. Now, let me explain how to use these, because these are really, I found them to be tremendous in almost every setting I've been in. Whether it's door to door, which I've done hundreds and hundreds of doors this year, because I wanted to talk to cold calls, people that I didn't know, people didn't know me, and obviously my voice, my accent is totally different from the south to the north and so on, and these people know I'm a foreigner trying to talk to them, and you're trying to talk with them, and I even had people laugh at me down south as I knocked on some of the doors, and they'd, you're not even from here, are you? Now don't get offended at them. Smile and laugh a little bit. Enjoy the ride. You might just find that they'll open up and talk with you about the things of God if you can laugh about yourself. So being a little lighthearted and enjoyable goes a long ways at this point. You can go up and be Mr. Sober Sides if you want, knocking on the door. Let me tell you, you're going to get a lot more doors closed, a lot more people not willing to talk with you. But if you go up and enjoy yourself, they'll enjoy themselves. And I've had some of the most unusual things. I had one guy, I'll tell you this story real quick. I had one guy, it was real interesting. I beat on the door, and he came finally, And he was real hesitant as he opened the door. And it's like, what's going on? And he was a rough customer. I thought, oh my soul, I'm all by myself here. What's going to happen to me? Hopefully the preacher, when he comes back to pick me up, can carry my body to the hospital or the morgue, whichever's necessary here. And we got to talking, and finally the guy just comes out and he says, "Are you a cop?" And I said, "No, sir, I told you I'm from the Baptist church down here. I'm going to be preaching there on Sunday." And he looked at me and said, "Oh, okay," because the cops picked me up for murder. And I just got out, and I'm so glad that you aren't a cop, but I know they're watching me right now because I've been doing drugs, and he starts telling me about all this stuff, and I'm like, whoa, what did I get into? Now, the good news was he didn't invite me in the house yet, so I was safe outside. At least I could turn and run. And after a while, the preacher pulled up across the street, and he said, "Is that guy a cop over there? Do you know him?" And I looked and I said, "No, that's the pastor over there." And he said, "Okay, well then we're safe still." Yeah, thinking, is there going to be a gunfight break out here or what, you know? But I had opportunity to talk with him, and he just opened up with me, told me a lot about his life story. He was a military veteran. Some things that had happened in his life, just horrible things that had happened along the way, but I got to give the gospel to him. I probably spent a good 40 minutes at his door that day talking to him about Jesus Christ. And it started off very rough, but it opened up because the more we got to working into the questions, the more he began to open up and tell the truth about what was going on in his heart. I was seeing where his heart was. I was understanding where he was coming from. I was able to point him to Jesus Christ. And honestly, I was kind of shocked that he didn't show up at church that Sunday, because he had told me, I know you get people promising you and don't follow through, but I've had more people follow through with the way that I deal with people at the door now than I did ever before. So the first question is this one. It's really my favorite question. I like to use this one the most, and there's a reason behind that, I'll tell you. It has to do with spiritual issues. And there are going to be 5 questions I'm going to give you tonight. Don't think we're going to get through to all of them. I'll just give them to you, the others, but we're going to spend some time on this one for just a little bit. And the question on spiritual issues is real simple. Always start out with a scale of 1 to 5. On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being not at all and 5 being all the time, how often would you say you think about spiritual matters or spiritual things or spiritual issues? How often do you think about that? What shocked me as I went across America was, and this is what I was trying to gauge, have Americans, they're abandoning churches. I mean, right and left in America. Churches are going empty. And a lot of churches are closing down. A lot of communities I went into, the churches are full of a few old people. That's all they've got left. And nobody will come to church. And the preachers are saying there's just nobody interested anymore. I mean, I could just go on with a litany of complaints that I've heard this year. So my thought was, that's going to surely translate into low numbers on spiritual issues. I found a good 80% plus of the people in America rate themselves at a 4 and a 5. That blew me away. Many of them then gave an exception, and they said, but that doesn't mean I believe in organized religion, or I believe in a church, or I follow a church. At first blush, your thought would be, and my first thought was, well, if they don't like churches, then man, that's a mess, that's really bad. And I got to thinking, wait a minute, what an opportunity to capitalize on. People are saying the churches that we've gone to have left us with no answers. We've gone there, they don't help us, they don't point us to anything. Nothing's changed in our life. We see it as a waste of time, and yet we still know that there's some kind of spiritual entity out there, some kind of a God, and we want to know who He is. We still think about that, but we've given up on churches that don't have answers. But the good part? if I can get them to understand that I've got an answer that they haven't been hearing before, and that I've got an answer that changes lives, transforms hearts. Now, if they can grasp that there's something different here, I've got an opportunity to change their life and have an impact on them. I think Americans are more ripe for the gospel right now than they have ever been. They're not ripe for churchianity. But true biblical Christianity, I believe, is wide open possibility with many people. Now, instead of arguing about their church or your church or the different churches that they could choose, stay off the subject, fellas. Ladies too. Go for Christ. Talk about Him. That's where you want to go. So I start with this question on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 almost never, 5 all the time. How often do you think about spiritual issues? And once in a while, and I'm shocked it wasn't far more often, once in a while I'll get a 1 or a 2. And you say, what do I say if it's a 1 or a 2? Okay, well, let me answer that objection first, okay? That's a simple one to fix. Has there ever been a time, Eric, I hear you say you're only a 1. You never think about spiritual things anymore. Okay, I understand. Tell me, Eric, has there ever been a time in your life when you would rate yourself at a higher number when you did think about spiritual things? You know what Eric could tell me? If Eric had been a 1, and he isn't, but if he had been, Eric would say, yeah, there was. Either he'd say that or he'd come back like some of the atheists that I met came back and they would say, well, I'm not sure I believe in God. Why do I need to even answer that? And what they just told me is, yeah, there was a time. And as I spent more time talking to them, eventually they opened up, like the lawyer that I told you about down there in New Mexico. And he turned out to end up being very friendly. Simply because he was a 1. But he knew that there had been a time when he would have been much higher. He would have rated himself up around a 3 or a 4 easily. Something happened in his life. And that's where you want to head. It isn't that you need to uncover the details of what happened. You just need to know that's what he's struggling with. He's had some tragedy, some crisis, some situation that just really hurt him. And his only way of answering the problem was, where's God? A lot of people have that question. Even Job had that question. So what I do is I ask this question on a scale of 1 to 5. How often do you think about spiritual issues? And if they're somewhere from a 3 to a 5, I just ask them this question. If you could get one question answered, and you knew you'd get the right answer. I don't bring the Bible in yet. I just don't bring God in. I just say, if you could ask one question and you knew you'd get the right answer, I'm not telling them how they're going to figure out what the right answer is yet. What question would you ask? Some people, and you see it, I mean, on their face, it's like they go all contorted. Oh boy, I don't know. They're a 5. I think about it all the time, but I don't know what I'd ask. Kind of funny, but sometimes what I'll do is then I'll just supply 2 or 3 of the answers that people often give me. Would it be one of these? Sometimes they'll give me an answer and they'll say, well, this is what I would ask. I'm going to tell you how to handle that in a little bit. When they give you an answer, they're telling you what's on the surface level. They're seldom going to dig down to the bottom of their heart. And so you can keep asking them, well, if you got an answer to that, what difference would that make to you and to your life? And what you're trying to do is you're trying to dig down at least to that second layer to figure out what's going on underneath there. What's the real question that they're trying to ask? Why would a good God let bad things happen to good people? Okay. Now, I could stand there and talk with them and reason with them, and they're probably not going to receive my answers, and that's okay, but what if there was another way to answer that and give them the perfect answer? I told you I'd give you that tonight. I'm going to give you the perfect answer in just a minute. Number two, here's the second question. Here's one I like to ask. It has to do with the Bible's reliability. Scale of 1 to 5. 1, it's a book full of lies and myths and mistakes. The Bible isn't anything more than a man's book, just absolute craziness. To a 5, it's a book from God. It's the truth. How did I label it up here? Yeah, a lie to total truth. There we go. Okay. So I'll phrase it in some manner like that. On a scale of 1 to 5, how reliable do you think the Bible is? And this is a question you can use, by the way, you can use the first question, go to the second question. Or you can spend all your time on the first question and stop there. You can mix and match these, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. But basically what I'm after here is, what do they think of the Word of God? And if they don't believe the Word of God is anything more than man's words, then I might want to come back and deal with that. But I'm going to give you the perfect answer tonight. And when I give you the perfect answer, you're going to find the perfect answer is the same perfect answer for the first question. Oh, okay. And again, if they tell me a 1, I again ask them the question, has there ever been a time when you would have rated yourself at a higher number? And not all the time, but most of the time, they'll say yes. Which tells me something's happened in their life. A lot of time they went to university, or a lot of times they might have had a problem in their life and it didn't turn out the way they wanted, and so now they're mad at God. Or maybe somewhere, it goes on with the different ideas here, but I don't know if I don't ask. If I assume I know what's going on, I'm going to make the wrong assumption most of the time, because there's a myriad of possible reasons why it's happened this way. Don't assume you know. You're not that wise, only Jesus is. And isn't it kind of unusual that Jesus Christ, who knew all the answers, still asked the questions? Number 3, Jesus Christ. Now this came from a preacher down in New Mexico while I was down there knocking doors in one town, and a preacher down there who sports me was, do you know Brother Hodges by chance? You don't know him, okay. I just really had a great time down there with him. But anyway, I was given the 4 questions that I was using, and he dropped this out in the middle of a service, and I said, man, I love that question. This turned into my 5th question, and this has to do with Jesus Christ on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being Jesus is nothing more than a con man. 5 being Jesus is God in the flesh. 4 would be basically a prophet. He's a good prophet sent by God. 3 would be, he was a good guy who was trying to do a lot of good, but that's about where it ended. He didn't get it all right. Or number 2, he's pretty deceived. He didn't really understand what he was doing. He was kind of crazy, to the con man at the very bottom. Scale of 1 to 5, when you think about Jesus Christ, who do you think he was? And you see the wheels start to turn. This is a great discussion to have with people. And I'm not saying that this question has to be asked 1, 2, 3. You might go to this question and start with this question and stop right there. You could have a tremendous gospel conversation right here. Number 4. The 4th question is, and this one you'll recognize right away on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being I'm an absolute mess, and 5 being I am absolutely the most perfect human being that ever lived. How good of a person do you think you are in God's eyes? Do you know where most people will rate themselves? They aren't going to go 5. They're wiser than that, all right? But they'll be around a 3 or a 4. And where do you go with that? Real simple. How about the good person test? How about the 10 Commandments? And what you've done, instead of asking them, do you think you're good enough to go to heaven, yes or a no, instead of boxing them in and trapping them into an answer that's going to lead to some conversation that they didn't want, you're asking their opinion. And now, instead of going right to the 10 Commandments and the good person test, I would first start with, well, tell me this, how would you judge what good is and what bad is? And Explain to me how you would explain some of these other, what would you consider bad? How would you consider someone not being a good person, just rotten to the core? I'm listening to them. I'm understanding their worldview. I'm understanding where they're coming from, their starting place, and I want to get them to the place to where they understand God's view of sin and that all men are sinners. Now get this, all men are sinners. But here's something that I've picked up on big time over in Africa. It's not just that you do sinful things, it's that even your good works in the eyes of God are like a filthy rag. And see, that's what they don't get. That's what Americans don't get. They think somehow that if I can do enough good things, I can make up for the bad things. But what God says is, your good things are like filth in His eyes. So how could your filth ever make you right with God? That's why we need Jesus Christ. Question number 5 is, how sure are you of heaven? On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being, I probably am not going, I'm pretty sure I'm going to miss it, to a 5, I'm absolutely positive I'm going to be there. Scale of 1 to 5, where are you going to be? Now, do you see the beauty of this one? Because if you ask a yes or no question, are you sure you're going to heaven? There's a lot of people will say yes. And then you've got to counter with the opposition question, well, prove that. And now you're into an argument. But if you ask people on a scale of 1 to 5, most people will put themselves around a 3 or a 4. And now you can launch right into the question. You can deal with the issue of being sure that you can be a number 5. And would that be something that would interest you? Would you be interested in knowing why you can't be a 5 like you are and you need something different happening in your life? Those 5 questions, if you will arm yourself with those 5, can you kind of remember those 5? Is that hard to do? Can you remember scale of 1 to 5? If you can do that, you got the biggest part of this thing done. Amen. You can start with any one of the 5. You can use more than one. In fact, let's just go. I think the next slide might have this in it. Oh yeah, here we go. Here's the tips on the 5 questions. Here we go. Let me give you these real quick. Keep the questions ready. Keep them on the tip of your tongue. Every once in a while, just kind of remind yourself what they are. Sometimes I'll lay awake at night and think about asking those questions and how I could ask them better and how I could word them in a way that would make them more understandable and more palatable. How can I say them in a tone of voice that doesn't sound like I'm trying to accuse them, but I'm trying to really hear what they have to say, like I'm genuinely interested. And I'm not talking about acting. I'm talking about it needs to come from the heart, but the tone of voice has a lot to do with all this. You take the tone of voice out and these questions will fall flat. The tone of voice is critical here. Go deeper with your questions. When you ask about, for instance, if we go back to thinking about that first question on a scale of 1 to 5, how often do you think about spiritual things, spiritual issues? Most people are going to come in around a 3, a 4, or a 5. A 4 and a 5 will be your biggest crowd, and definitely a 3 to 5, and you'll just get a smattering of 1s and 2s. You won't find very many of those. That's been shocking to me. And I've been around communities where I've got a lot of university people, and I still did not get a lot of 1s and 2s. Rather interesting to me. Now, I don't know, maybe, well, anyway, we'll save that. But go deeper. So they say, well, I'd be a 4. Okay. So you ask the question, what question would you like to have an answer to if I could give you an answer to that? Or you knew you could get a right answer. What question would you ask? What would make the difference with, and sometimes what would make the difference with that question will yield some real pay dirt. Well, here's the problem I've got in my life, and I'm really trying to figure out how to handle this. That's where the guy was, the fellow who'd been arrested for murder. That's where he was. And so we were in the middle of a great conversation because of that question going just a little bit deeper. You can also carry that question on to add another question. You could jump from here right on down to question number 4 and ask them on a scale of 1 to 5, where would you be as far as a good person is? How good would God say you are? And now you've launched right into the good person test where you can talk to them about their sin. Or you could go to number 5 and ask them on a scale of 1 to 5, how sure are you that you'd go straight to heaven if you died? And you've got a great conversation at work. So you're going deeper with the questions. And when you run out, and here's what I find is, on occasions I'd have people, I'd ask a question, they'd agree to do the survey, and I ask them a question, and they kind of begrudgingly give me answers. That's okay, then I'll jump to the second question or the third question, and I'll just keep going a little bit. And sometimes you'll find people who are just giving you quick, curt answers. They're not really engaged. The wheels aren't turning. You're wasting your time. They're leaning away. They're not seekers. They're not even simple that are kind of leaning towards listening to the truth. They're kind of leaning away, and maybe they aren't a scorner enough to run you off, but they're really not open at all. And with those folks, I'll leave them with some literature, let them know I'm praying for them, thank them for their time, and go my way. Plant a seed and walk off. But with those that are opening up, and when they're starting to open up, you'll be able to sense that as you're asking the questions. And as they're opening up, you know, you're dealing with somebody with a serious heart. They're not quite sure if they can trust you. They don't know how far to go. But they're opening up, and you've got an opportunity to influence them with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Third, you can mix these questions up. As I've already alluded to, you can go to any one of them. You can do to all five. You got a relative, use one of the questions with one of your relatives, and you know you're going to see them at another family get-together. Save the other 4 for the other family get-together and use it another time. You're loaded up with lots of shot here to be able to take the gospel to your family and your friends. These aren't the only 5 questions, by the way. These are just 5 that I've hatched here that work well, but you can add your own questions in there. But these are meant to get to the heart of the issue that ultimately lead you to presenting the gospel to a person. And that's why I've developed them the way that I have. And then you really want to keep the door open. So here we go. Now we're going to get down to the brass tacks. What's the perfect answer to all of these? Scale of 1 to 5, how often do you think about spiritual things? Well, you know, probably a 4. Well, what question would you want to ask? And they'll ask you a question, and maybe it'll be something like, well, I want to know, why does God, and this is the biggest question I've gotten across America, why does God let bad things happen to good people? Now, you can take that question apart in a million different ways. Could you explain to me a little bit about what you think about God? What kind of God is He? Who is He? You could talk about God. Explain to me a little bit what you mean by a good person. See where you could run right into the good person test with that one. Explain to me, if you could, by bad things, what you mean by bad things. What if I could show you from the Scriptures? Now I need to know if they accept Scripture yet or not, but what if I could show you from the Scriptures that bad things don't happen to God's people? Yeah. They're bad in our judgment. I've had a lot of bad things happen in my life. I wouldn't call them good things necessarily, but they ultimately turn out for good because I have a God who cares for me. And what if I could share with them some tragedy in my life that was really bad? Yeah, it was bad when my dad died, let me tell you. But let me tell you something good, too, that came out of it. And I could go on with a million others like that. And all I'm doing is asking questions with them, okay? But I'm going to give you the perfect answer when you get down to the brass tacks and you say, okay, now what am I? All you're doing is asking questions. Can you ask questions? How much do you have to know to ask questions? You just got to have a question to ask. Pretty simple. They got to do all the talking, and while their wheels are turning, you can be busy trying to think, okay, well, what's the next best question for me to ask? Then it gets down to brass tacks. I have to answer. The perfect answer. Are you ready? You want to get this. This will solve it for all 5 questions. You know, this is really an interesting subject to me. I'm glad you brought it up. Can you say that? Huh? Okay, all right, we're on the right track here, okay. I'm just trying to get it down simple here, okay. This is really interesting. I'm glad you brought it up. If I could come up with a really good answer, I mean, I'm really interested in this, and I'd like to go do a little study on it, do some thinking. But if I could come up with an answer that's really interesting on this, would it be okay if I come back and talk to you? How much you got to know to say that? Boy, that's not very hard. How much Bible do I have to know to say that? How much Bible theology do I have to remember? I don't have to remember much at all. Now here's the beauty of this. By saying that to them, by meaning that, number one, you're taking them serious. What you said is really serious to me. I think it's a good question. You also are buying yourself time. I don't know if I wrote all this on my deal. Nope, I didn't. Okay. You're also buying yourself time. I don't have to think of an answer on the spot. Any of you ever have a problem with that? You're talking to somebody and they say something and you know you ought to say something, but you just can't think of the right thing to say. And after you go away, you say, oh, I wish I'd. You ever do that? Oh, all the time. I'm telling you how you can get away from that problem. Man, that's a great thought. I'd like to really give this some thought. I'm not the know-it-all who came in here to talk to you. I don't have all the answers. But I'd like to come back and talk to you. Would it be okay if I come back and talk to you? If I come up with something worth talking about here, would it be okay? Do you know what most people say? Well, sure. Do you know what that does? This is good. Now you can pull out your card and your pen and say, now, what was your name again and your phone number so I can just call you ahead of time just to be sure that you're going to be around? Do you know what's going to happen? They aren't going to meet you at the door and keep you at the door this time. They're going to have you inside the house and you're going to sit down and talk to them. You say, but how am I going to answer here's the beauty of it. You don't have to know the answer at all. You come to this guy right over here and you say, it's about time you earned your money. Here's my question. What do I do? Now, I'm being a little facetious here, but honestly, you got resources all over in this room. People that can help you. And the goal is, now look, the goal isn't to have some great answer to show them how wrong they are. The goal is to have an answer that helps lead them from Scripture to the deeper issue of their heart and their need of Jesus Christ. It gives you time to pray for them, to study an answer where you can sit down and explain to them from Scripture in a setting where you're talking with them, not at them. You're going to find your conversations become far more profitable. So you're going to get that contact information. So here it is real fast. Last slide, guys. Mark 16:15. Here's your final takeaways. That's what the paper sacks are all about, okay? Here's your final takeaways. Oh, I didn't fix those up right, did I? Okay, they were supposed to come on one at a time. All right. Number one, start talking to people. I mean, you'll be shocked. Just go out, especially this time of year. Look people in the eye and smile. Whoa. They'll be shocked. I mean, you're walking down the aisle at some store, or you're in the mall going to some store, and you look, somebody's coming at you, and you know how they do. They kind of glance up. That's how you do too, isn't it? And you just kind of glance up, but you don't want somebody to know that you're actually looking at the people in front of you. Well, they're looking at you too. And look at them. Look them eye to eye. You start looking at them with a smile. And when they look up and they, whoa, this guy's smiling at me. What's up his sleeve, huh? And the moment you catch their eye, you say, hey, how you doing? What are they going to do? Some of them will just duck their head. Okay, now we'll go their way. That's okay, let them go, let them go, let them go. You're looking for the person who says, Well, I'm okay. How are you? Amen. Oh, wait a minute. Hey, would you have a moment? By chance, would you have a moment? Well, no, I'm really kind of in a hurry. Hey, not a problem. It's okay. Have a great month. Bye. What have you lost? Nothing. Probably made somebody happy. That's okay. Doesn't hurt if you make somebody happy once in a while. But once in a while, somebody will stop. Now, my favorite place is that bench in the mall. Number one, my wife can go do all her trotting around and looking. Always keep the credit cards in your pocket, not hers. And I just wait for somebody to sit down. Every once in a while, I'll see they go to another bench and sit down, and I'll just get up and meander over there and sit down on that bench. Hey, how you doing? Oh, I can see your wife's got you out here too, doesn't she? I had a guy laughing the other night over at the store over there, and he was sitting out there, and he was just, and I said, yeah, I know exactly what I'm following this woman around too. And we had a good time. But anyway, you never know what's going to open up, and then you have opportunity to speak to them and say, hey, I got a question. Wondering if you could help me out with a question if I asked you. Would it be okay? You're asking permission. Would it be okay if I asked you a question? Yeah, it's okay. Now, are they going to throw you out of the mall for asking permission to ask a question? No. And if the person says, I don't want to talk about Bible things or religion things. I'm sorry, I was just asking a question. It's okay. But if they'll talk to you, and it's rare that they won't, you'll have a conversation going. So start talking to people. Second, ask these questions. Get those 5 questions up there, but just start with being friendly with people, and then look for the deeper questions. As you ask the question, dig a little deeper. Well, what question would you ask God? What would make you a good enough person to get to heaven, do you think? What would you have to do more? What do you think God would require? What do you think God expects? But ultimately, where you're headed is number 4, speak about Jesus. You know, I think there's some answers in the Bible. I think you brought up a really good point here, and I'd really like to maybe think about this some more. Would it be okay if I came up with a good answer or something worth talking about on this issue? Could I just give you a quick call, and see if you have a couple of minutes? Would you be willing? You can pull a tract out, hand them a tract. But you never know where that conversation might go. Is everybody going to listen? No. Is everybody going to get saved? Absolutely not. We already know there's few that are going to be saved. But it doesn't say there's none that'll be saved. I want to be part of pulling some out of the fire. Brother Dean sent out that email. Did you all see that this afternoon? Wasn't that kind of cool? And he's got a guy back there at the airport who's going to have questions for him next time he comes back through the airport. I thought, man, that's pretty neat. And he hadn't even heard this part of the message yet. Who can you get this week to talk to? Who'll be open to you coming back and talking to them again? What if you spoke up, tried to be friendly, spoke up, and just asked the question and asked God to do the work and look for the people that the Lord is dealing with? Wouldn't it be kind of neat to be part of that this year? We've still got a whole month left in 2017. Let's go out and talk to people about Christ. Father, help us, I pray, to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Help us to be wise in the way that we try to reach out and win others to Jesus. Lord, help us, every one of us here, to be able to take some of these tools and use them in a wise way that really are simple ways. The only thing we really have to get over is our fear of man, enough to trust you, to be friendly, and to ask a question. And Lord, I pray you'd give us some good gospel conversations the rest of this year. And give us someone that each one of us can dig in with in a Bible study and point them further to Jesus Christ. With heads bowed and eyes closed tonight, the invitation's really fairly simple. Would you try to talk to somebody this week? Do you know the average person, we're told, has 27 conversations in a day? The average person, 27 conversations. You think it'd really be hard to ask one spiritual question in 1 out of 27 conversations? I don't. In fact, I might be able to do it more often than just once in a day. What doors might God open if all of us did that tonight? So I invite you tonight to just come and say, Lord, I want to appoint myself as an army of one to care about the souls of men and try to get into a gospel conversation with at least one person this week. Maybe you want to make a commitment for one a day. I don't care. Don't overdo it. Do something that you can carry through with. But one a week shouldn't be too hard. You could almost do that on the telephone, not even go out of your house, huh? Would you dare to ask God to help you do what He's already asked you to do? I invite you to come tonight as we stand to our feet, heads are bowed. The pianist is going to play. The pastor's going to come.